Welcome to another special edition of Daily Airline News. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, and I'm joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good morning, Richard.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey.
And today we're going to be taking more of your questions about what Captain Martin Smith saw. We've had a tremendous reaction to it, and questions are just flooding in. And Richard, the first one we've got is from Nicholas, which he actually emailed me directly. And here is the question, he says, regarding SOSUS underwater listening system. One other commentator says you already talked about it. And the last comment is someone saying there was no crash detected on such data. Do you mind answering this again in an upcoming video or direct me to where I can cover it? Speaking about Captain Smith spotting the US Navy planes searching the right area 15 hours after the disappearance, you mentioned this could be due to primary radar on Diego Garcia. This could be, but I directly think about SOSUS data again. SOSUS could have led the US Navy in the general area in only a couple of hours. I read somewhere about a hydrophone that only picked up a weak sound on March 8, 2014 that was determined not to be the crash of a big plane. In my opinion, military systems like SOSUS are almost guaranteed to pick up an event such as a big airliner crashing into the sea. Those military systems with several listening posts are very sophisticated. I think this could be one piece of the puzzle that could help us solve the question of MH370's crash location. So there's a series of questions in that piece.
Yeah, I counted three key questions. On SOSUS, which is the sound surveillance system, the US have fixed seafloor assets and mobile assets on ships and buoys, and they are in the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and the Indian Ocean. They have officially stated that they did not detect MH370. They have also stated, however, that they would neither confirm nor deny any such detection should it have taken place. They will not provide any details due to the classified nature of the surveillance systems. Now, onto primary radar. The US has a global network of over the horizon radar systems. The data is shared between over 20 stations on a satellite network. The prime over the horizon radar covering the Indian Ocean is based at Pine Gap in Australia. Diego Garcia is another of the stations with a satellite connection to a system called the Echelon system. And essentially, that can capture every telephone call, email, SMS, any tweet or X or mobile cell or radio or TV or microwave link or satellite link, and includes, of course, every aircraft. And that's captured 24/7 globally in the Echelon system. It's funded by the CIA, the NSA, and the security services of Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand, the so-called Five Eyes. The communications captured by Echelon include anything from MH370. So, on one hand, Echelon is very protective of our security. On the other hand, it's quite a frightening prospect, knowing that every move and every thought we might have is captured in a database and filtered looking for keywords. You also mentioned the hydroacoustic data. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization has three listening stations in the Indian Ocean, HA01 at Cape Lewin in Western Australia, covering the southeastern part of the Indian Ocean. HA04 at Crozet Islands, the French southern and Antarctic lands, which covers the southern Indian Ocean, and HA08 at Diego Garcia in the British Indian Ocean territories, which covers the northern Indian Ocean. You don't mention that there's also a CDAA surveillance system, a circular disposed antenna array on Diego Garcia and elsewhere, which can be used for direction finding. There's also a satellite surveillance system on Diego Garcia. It has an ANGSC 39C super high frequency satellite system and able to intercept any satellite communication in its area of operation. It also has a GEOD system, GEODSS, ground-based electro-optical deep space surveillance system. So Diego Garcia, if you look at it on Google Earth, is just brimming full of electronics and surveillance equipment. In summary, Nicholas, the sound surveillance, the over-the-horizon radar, the hydroacoustic and other surveillance systems uh, are there, and they haven't all been revealed in terms of the data that they could provide to solve MH370. And the reason they don't reveal it is because they watch Iraq, Afghanistan, Russia, China, North Korea, and the Middle East from Pine Gap and from Diego Garcia and 20 other locations around the world. And they simply do not want to give away the extent of their capability.
Yeah, it would seem they've got lots of capability in all.
That,
Yeah,
that that's the one way of summarizing it, Jeffrey.
yeah,
Yep.
yes. And they're obviously not telling us everything they know, which of course is coming through loud and clear. So,
Yeah.
Alex Olbus, Hotel 3, India. Question, thank you for your amazing work. The Poseidon aircraft went out on 8 March, and according to your analysis so far, Richard, they seem to have very closely followed the true track of MH370 over the Indian Ocean, according to Whisper. However, they didn't have that data at the time, and I think only had Inmarsat data to go on. Does the fact that the two tracks fit so well together now that they've plotted with the benefit of hindsight using historic Whisper data validate your work and the accuracy of Whisper crash location? To put it another way, the MH370 and Poseidon Whisper tracks seem so spot on, they must be true. Yeah, we think
Yeah.
they are, but yeah.
But what validates the whisper work is the literally thousands of aircraft that we track from the ADS-B data, comparing that to the whisper data. Um, MH370 is the application of the whisper system to a very special case where an aircraft disappeared. Yes, they did have the Inmarsat satellite data, but I think they also had over the horizon SOSUS, the CTBTO, radio, SATCOM, CDAA, as well as other passive radar systems. And these passive radar systems operate just like Whisper does.
Azaris, good morning, folks. A couple of questions for you both, if I may. Yes, you may. When the crash happened, could there have been some leaked fuel on the surface that could be detected? Now, that's a really good question. Going back to the mobile phones, which was discussed before, when the plane began to descend, wouldn't passengers' mobile phones reconnected to signal towers, giving a precise location of the crash? Thank you both so much.
Um, Unfortunately, you won't find very much leaked fuel because the plane was flown to fuel exhaustion, and the fuel pumps ensure that almost every last drop of fuel gets used. On the mobile phones issue, there aren't any mobile towers within range in the middle of the Indian Ocean, so they wouldn't reconnect.
Indeed. Edward Leyden, 460. I'm no expert on aviation by any stretch of the imagination, but I have always wondered why, with all the technology at our fingertips in the world today, that no one seems to have any info as to where it is, um, in the sea or whatever.
Well, Edward, I think there are lots of people with lots of information, and the problem is we don't have access to all of it. We have got quite a lot of data, but I think there is far more data out there that we don't have when compared with the a large amount that we do have.
Yeah. So Rod Gallagher, 5566. 100 satellite ocean buoys should have been deployed in different areas. Ocean currents give indications.
Yep, ocean currents certainly do give indications, and there are over 1,000 drifter buoys permanently globally in operation and in all the oceans of the world. And when one buoy comes to the end of its operating life and are no longer transmitting signals via satellite, then it gets replaced with a new one to ensure this minimum coverage of 1,000 drifter buoys.
So Bill M. McMelvey, 5188. Cannot NASA find this aircraft measuring the Earth's magnetic fields as aluminium is paramagnetic? Surely they should be able to spot a hole in their mapping.
Yeah, I'm glad you said aluminium, which is the way I pronounce it.
Not a
It is aluminum in certain areas. I was picked up yesterday for my pronunciation of cadena in Okinawa, Japan, and got told it's cadena, not cadena. Well, it's actually cadena in English, and it's Kadena in Okinawan, but I don't speak Okinawan. And we do an English language broadcast. So, uh, aluminum or aluminium is 70% of the total aircraft structure of a Boeing 777. 11% steel, 7% titanium, 11% composites. And you're quite right to point out that there is a geomagnetic measurement possibility, and the overall mass of the aircraft, when you include the interiors and the avionics and the engines and the systems, then aluminium share is closer to just 50% of the weight. That's one reason why the AUVs we use for underwater search have a geomagnetic detector. Of course, the closer you get to a target, the much better the resolution with a geomagnetic detector. But you can, as you say, detect that from space, and maybe NASA knows something that they can tell us.
Mm. Screwy Tube. It's a good name. The right stuff. Both of you have the data, logical conclusions. Seems the US Navy has some of their own. Any idea of disclosure? Can Richard verify what all of it means?
Well, that's a big question with a very wide scope. Screwy tube, but you've got the right name for asking that question. Um, I would call it mushroom management. Mushroom management is when you keep them in the dark and shovel shit on them. So we are being kept in the dark, and there are lots of misinformation out there about MH370, which you could, you know, give the image of shoveling shit on us. The problem is not how much we know, the problem is what we don't know. And the biggest problem is when you don't know what you don't know, if you see what I mean.
Mm.
So we're asking loads of questions here, which is great, but is there a question we should be asking that we're not asking?
Indeed. Top Deck Sundays. Gentlemen, absolutely brilliant episode. For me, this blows the entire research open for further digging. I think what's really sad is that in this world, how people continue to trust governments with information and worse, the media delivery of information or lack of. Very interesting episode indeed. G'day from WA. That's
Ah, good
obviously
day to you.
a real person.
Good, good day from to you in WA, which I presume is Western Australia
Yep.
and not Washington State. Um, Information management is not a democratic process. If it were to be a democratic process, then we would have transparent decision making, equal access to information, and mechanisms for accountability. Unfortunately, that is not ubiquitous.
Yep. Demystify 1381, and hence conspiracy theories are born, and rightly so.
Good comment.
Yeah. So Lauren de Mornay, amazing work, thank you. Perhaps it would be an idea to number the episodes about MH370. That would help getting back to a specific episode more quickly when needed. When the episode starts saying this is another episode, make all episodes alike.
Yeah,
So yeah.
good idea, I think, Lauren. Welcome to episode 90, by the way.
So this is now
Um,
episode 90. Okay.
yeah. So I have a database. Perhaps we should publish it, Jeffrey, with all 90 links. So you can see the title, the date, and the YouTube link. And you can then, one thing to have the frequently asked questions, but if we had a database of all the links, then people could say, "Oh, well, I wanted that episode back on the 13th of March or whatever it was."
Yeah, well, look, that's something we will do, and we'll get that up and give you details about it within the next few days when we get it all organised. JB, Charlie Yankee 9, Papa Bravo. If the US military aircraft were deployed only for search and rescue mission, they could have easily sought the assistance of Australia instead of flying from Diego Garcia. They didn't elaborate anyone about this mission, or no one would have come to know about it if Captain Smith is not sharing his sightings. Still, I couldn't digest these lapses.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to understand, and I fully appreciate and understand the question. The Five Eyes collaboration between US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand does have its limitations. We talked about Pine Gap, for example, which is a US facility jointly run with the Australian Defence and Security Services in a location in central Australia. And in this facility, there are two cryptography departments. One is owned by the US and the other is owned by Australia. And personnel from one area are not allowed access to the other area. So the information going between the US and Australia is controlled, probably on a need to know basis. And it is not just simply transparent distribution of all information.
So those five eyes sometimes are blindsided.
Yep. And sometimes one eye is shut or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that doesn't sort of surprise me. Um, Paul Todd, 3497. So from what I hear and what I see, there is a lot of information that the US Defense Force will not release. Does the US know more of the 370 disappearance than we know?
Absolutely, Paul. Um, but it's not just the US. There's a long list of other nations who know more than they are saying, as we pointed out. And our appeal is for nations to disclose what they feel they can disclose. They don't have to tell us how they know the information if they don't want to reveal surveillance security secrets. Uh, that sheer the fact sometimes that they know something proves that they have the capability. So it's a difficult catch 22.
Hmm. Fairy Socks 221. Why would the commander of the Pacific Fleet congratulate them if they failed? Maybe it was congratulations in finding it. This is top secret. Another conspiracy theory.
Yeah, but I mean, how do we know they failed? They could have been successful, and maybe they're just not telling us of their success. So you got to be careful about what you don't know and versus what you do know. And the attempt we had with the episode on the huge data missing was to work out what is the sum total of data that is available and how much of that have we been given in the public domain. There have been some data that's been leaked, like the uh, police report from the Royal Malaysian Police in 5 volumes. But there's a lot of data that we still do not have.
From Crosswired 8000, are you saying the American Poseidons were looking for the plane and mysteriously won't confirm this? Also, who would be paying for all this flight time? Can someone follow the money?
Yeah, well, we did follow the money, and we announced yesterday the Pentagon statement that they spent $3.3 million in 16 days from March 8 to March 24. And they say funding ships, helicopters, surveillance flights, and it all came out of their humanitarian aid budget. So we are following the money and it goes back to the Pentagon.
Shanley 7749, Richard says, looks like you're getting close to the truth. I can see why Jeff Wise is so annoyed with you. The Americans don't want their involvement publicized.
Yeah, well, there are a lot more people besides Jeff Wise who are annoyed with us, and both Jeffrey and I and Blaine are continually reminded of the annoyance of a number of people.
Mm, unfortunately. MJ Lazybones, I don't understand in this and other videos, you say the military were searching on the 8th and how quickly the Inmarsat data was made available to military searchers. Yet other videos you have said when the official search happened 3 weeks after, from memory, any debris field was gone. So what's the possibility of debris field being spotted by military searchers the day after? Well, that's a good question.
Yeah. So the Malaysian official search started on the 8th of March, but it started in the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. Then it moved to the Malacca Strait and towards the Andaman Islands. The Australian official search started on the 18th of March, 10 days later, and that started with a huge area. The Australian search and rescue area is 54 million square kilometers. And that is, to put it in perspective, 1/10 of the Earth's surface. And that out of that area of 54 million square kilometers, 85% is ocean. So it's a huge task, and you need as much data as you can to be precise about the crash location of MH370. Now, the US Navy were on the job on the 8th of March, and their motive, if there is any possibility of survivors from a crash, following a crash in the Indian Ocean somewhere, with a water temperature of around 22 degrees centigrade, you have a maximum of 40 hours to find those survivors. And if they're injured, then it's a much shorter time. So you need to be on the job straight away if you're intent on a search and rescue operation of any meaning.
So Ken France 4637 says, what is the great mystery here? Some more introductory context to the video would be helpful.
Well, Ken, this is a disappearance of a modern commercial jet with 239 souls on board, and there's no trace after 11 years. And we've spent over $300 million on various searches, which have involved several thousand people, several hundred search and rescue flights, an unspecified number of ships, and all that happened in poor weather with tropical cyclones in a remote location. So some say this is the biggest mystery in aviation history, and I don't think they're far wrong.
No. Wacol 34 Delta, this is by far the most informative and impressive 370 search video I have seen. Sober expert level information. I am an Australian. Great to see Australian expertise being showcased. Well, that's very nice of you to say so, but there's a lot of British expertise in this one.
I'm not Australian.
No,
I can't tell a kangaroo from a wombat.
no, no. But look, a lovely comment. Thank you very much indeed. But this is really a global effort. Kimberly Orr, 1603. Thank you so much for never giving up on the search of 370. The world wants to know what happened and where so that family members of the passengers are able to have peace and closure. And that's a final comment for today.
Yeah, and I would just say, Kimberly, not a day goes by where I don't think of the 239 souls and the family members and friends left behind.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, and one of the things that really upsets both Richard and I is the fact that over the last 11 years, there's been about 150 books written about the disappearance of MH370, and most of them, not all of them, but most of them are bizarre, ludicrous conspiracy theories that take the relatives left behind on a ghastly roller coaster ride. And that's fanned by the tabloid media for clickbait. And it's a very, very sad situation and a very traumatic situation. So listeners, sorry, and viewers, I should say, although some of you to listen to this as you're driving to work, I know. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got lots more questions to go through regarding what Captain Smith saw, and Richard's also working on what happened out of Diego Garcia the next day, and that'll be quite a few more days before we have that information. But we're going to come back tomorrow to answer more of your questions. So please tune in tomorrow. Please subscribe to us. Please like us and please leave more comments. And Richard, thank you very much indeed for all your work in answering these questions from Germany, not from Australia.
Ja, vielen Dank und auf Wiedersehen.
And viewers will please tune in tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.